I moved into the old apartment during a rainstorm. The air was thick, with humidity and the smell of damp wood lingered in the corners. Nestled in the heart of a city I had just moved to, the building had its charms, a quaint architectural style, and a faded allure, but I could feel its age in every creak of the floorboards and sigh of the pipes. They say first impressions last, but mine quickly transformed into a dismissive shrug as I took my first steps inside. I assured myself the peeling wallpaper and the flickering lights were merely signs of character, and that I'd make the most of this new beginning. The first week passed with the dull rhythm of unpacking and settling in. It was a solitary routine, but I found solace in the silence that enveloped me each night. The evenings were peaceful until I began to hear distant sounds, faint rustling from beneath my bed. Initially, I shrugged it off as a rat, or maybe just the building settling. After a long day, my tiredness drowned out my curiosity. But as the days turned into weeks, the sounds became more distinct, scratching, faint whispers, a breathy voice that seemed to float just below my consciousness. Each night, it was the same ritual. I would drift off to sleep and then feel the cold grip of dread clutch my throat when the clock hummed to life at precisely 3:11 a.m. I would find myself jolted awake, staring into the darkness, each sound more pronounced than before, itchings under the bed, restless movements calling for me to uncover whatever resided in that shadowy void. It stirred fear, unlike anything I had ever experienced, igniting a primal urge to avoid looking, to suppress whatever horror lurked just out of view. For a brief time, I tried to resist the urge to investigate. I covered my head with blankets, lost in futile attempts to manipulate my own perception. Sleep paralysis came next, a disorienting, suffocating sensation that pinned me to the mattress, eyes wide open, yet unable to move. The whispers intensified during these moments, curling around my thoughts like smoke, sweet, yet suffocating. I would strain against my immobile limbs, feeling the pressure and presence of something intangible, but profoundly there, watching, waiting. One morning, I woke with an aching neck, and when I glanced in the mirror, I gasped. My skin was marred, with deep, red scratches, cross-hatched, like a cat's playful attack. I fumbled through possessions, with shaking hands, desperate for clarity. It was just my imagination. I chanted to myself, searching for a logical explanation, for the unexplained marks that didn't feel like they belonged to me. But by then, missing objects began to permeate my reality. I could never recall placing my keys on the kitchen table each morning, only to fumble around in search of them later. The more I looked, the more anxiety settled in my gut, whispering in my ear that I was losing my grasp on sanity. Days turned into weeks, and that resonating whisper echoed the same thought, "You're not alone." At nightfall, the entity beneath my bed began leaving recordings. At first, they were faint murmurs, barely heard over static. But as I played back the snippets, I realized they were not ambient noises, they were fragmented sentences, whispers woven together like an ancient language I could barely decipher. I was utterly consumed by the need to understand what these voices were saying. But as each night passed and the clock struck 3:11, I felt the edges of my reality fray. Sleep deprivation and dread worked in tandem until my waking hours felt as unfamiliar as my dreams. Distorted reflections haunted me from the corners of my vision, flitting away like shadows when I turned to face them. I had grown accustomed to the anxiety festering in the pit of my stomach, but the reality, that was now a twisted mirror, felt inescapable. I lost track of time. My days blended together. The whispers transformed into urgent pleas that crawled under my skin, and I finally mustered the courage to confront whatever dark force awaited. That night, I set up my phone to record beneath the bed before falling asleep. Shaking with trepidation, pressing record, I allowed exhaustion to pull me under. Once more, as the clock neared 3:11, brighter than ever, I broke through the haze of sleep. The burden of dread weighed on my chest, and I felt the familiar pressure of something looming, smothering my breath, yet something else stirred beneath. I dared myself to peek under the bed. Ice gripped my spine as I crouched low, my heart thumping against my ribcage. The darkness was thick, almost palpable, as I swallowed my fear and tried to peer through the chasm beneath. My phone buzzed softly, waking me to reality. I had forgotten the recording, somewhat of a desperate hope for reassurance against whatever was moving in the dark. I hurriedly reached for the device, eagerness mingled with dread, and clicked on the playback. What I heard shattered me, faintly but undeniably articulated. My name slithered through the speakers. Come closer. The voice resembled my own, tinged, warped, and chilling, yet distinct enough to send ice through my veins. I froze in horror, unable to comprehend how much I had actually become a part of this entity's realm. The very air in the room shifted. Shadows elongated and spiraled, merging with my deepest fears. I staggered back, dread morphing into desperation. The moment seeped into a gaping void. I could feel their presence. Behind me, something following. I bolted, not understanding where I was going, but compelled to escape from the apartment. I raced down the hall, hurling open the door to the lobby. My breath was a frantic rasp as I escaped into the musty night. But as I stood there trembling, the sounds lurking within the walls did not relent. I could hear them still, soft whispers, pulling at my consciousness, calling me back, insisting I return. I stumbled back into the apartment, weak, yet consumed with an inexplicable urge to ascertain the truth. I couldn't even construct a clear narrative. In my mind, I felt lost, as though I were walking through a fog with haunting whispers, beckoning me closer to the darkness. That gripped my reality. Home suddenly felt like a trap, but I had to know what lay beneath. I steeled myself, preparing to face whatever malevolent entity awaited. The air crackled with unease as I crept back into the bedroom. And there it was, unmistakable taunting. From below, echoing in a language I couldn't decipher, but felt woven into the fabric of my very soul. Gripping the bed frame, I yanked it away. From the wall, my heart wrestled. Against existential dread, I dropped my knees to the floor, bracing myself for what I might uncover. From the darkness emerged not just shadows, but an unsettling presence, a shifting figure that lingered between tangible reality and grotesque illusions. I tried to remain steady, but the whispers crescendoed into deafening screams that rippled through the silence, urging me to run. That moment morphed into chaos, a horrific frenzy of shadow and whispers, clawing at my mind, pulling me apart. At the seams, I backed away, my body trembling, in abject terror. But I felt as if something had latched onto my soul. I stumbled blindly toward the door, filled with sheer panic. What I had uncovered could not be unseen. My existence, once a chain of fading memory, warped into an unending cycle of fear. I no longer worked, no longer maintained connection. With friends, I was entangled in despair and surrounded by the darkness. Beneath my own bed, something that now seemed powerful enough to consume not just my sleep, but my very essence. It took weeks before I finally gathered enough courage to leave that cursed place behind. But even now, far removed from that nightmare, I can still feel its whispers following me into the night. I share this story not just as a tale of fear, but as a caution. Sometimes the silence in an old apartment is a whispering spine of history, of things better left undisturbed, where the corners of eye cannot discern the shadows, lurking just out of reach, hidden beneath the surface, waiting to slip into your waking life.